Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers defeat the St. Louis Blues 2-1 in overtime. And it's JT Miller that wins it again. It's his third overtime winner of the season. It's his second in 6 days. He did it over the weekend against Montreal. I believe he also had an assist in overtime, and he had a shootout winner. So, talk about this a lot, where it does not make up for the lack of production that he's had in regulation, but he certainly has delivered in what is a much different game. It's 3-on-3. It's not even close to what regulation is, but JT Miller in those situations has delivered very often. And Gabe Perreault, who was called up after the Rangers lost to Vancouver, Gabe Perreault scores his first NHL goal. And it goes off his skate. It was 5 seconds left in the power play, but they all count, and that's how it happens. And those are your two goals. And, Artemi Panarin was not in the lineup. He had an illness, so he was out. So there's a little bit of an excuse, I guess. But, again, Rangers are not a team that scores goals. St. Louis, this was a game the Rangers really had to win. I mean, St. Louis was coming off of a shutout win the night before against Winnipeg, a 1-0 win. And, the Rangers, they've come very close in different situations, at least for me, where it's like, all right, like, and really, in a lot of ways, it probably is more beneficial for them to lose games. Not as much in the NHL as the NFL, where the NFL, there is no lottery. The NHL, there is. Like, look, we saw the Rangers, win a couple of lotteries that you didn't expect them to win. We saw the Islanders this past year. So be careful what you wish for, but obviously you'd rather get the better odds percentage chance. But my point is that there's so much season to go. And again, just, even though I don't think this is a very good Ranger team, and it's not like for lack of effort. I mean, sometimes it's for lack of effort, but last year I feel like they kind of gave up or whatever. It's a totally different thing this year. To me, it's more of a talent issue, especially in the top six and just in general. But my main point is, when the Rangers come very close to just you being resigned to it being kind of over, they find a way to barely win some of these games. In fact, I mean, I can recall the last St. Louis Blues game, where at that point I was kind of the Rangers were losing. They barely won at home. They do it again here. And they're winning just enough to kind of hang around, in my opinion. But yeah, like, Rangers played a good, really, first 40 minutes. First period, the Rangers were the better team, even though St. Louis was winning after the first. It was the third period where St. Louis really, really took over. And what's kind of crazy about that is the fact that the Blues had played the night before. You would think, if you told me, hey, one of these teams is on a second of a back-to-back and one of them isn't, you'd think it would have been reversed. Now, the Rangers did get some chances towards the very end of the third, but yeah, like, the Rangers did not continue because, again, I felt like they, were the better team for most of the game, especially the first half of the game. But St. Louis really did kind of flip the script a bit. But, pretty good goaltending in this game for the most part between Igor Shesterkin and Jordan Binnington. So a lot of the times the Rangers have faced Joel Hofer and not Binnington, but they end up facing Binnington again with the Blues on a back-to-back and the way it landed. But yeah, so as far as, the roster and transactions go, the Rangers did make some moves. They call up Gabe Perreault, as I just said, and they call up Brennan Othmann, and both were in the lineup, and they sent down Yaroslav Hamelash and Brett Berard. So Berard was a healthy scratch last game. Hamelash was a healthy scratch, not the last game, but the one before. And so, look, they're looking for more offense, namely with Perreault. And I guess with Othmann, just kind of maybe rewarding him for some good play in Hartford. So the way it ends up going is, like I said, Perreault in, Othmann in, and in essence, Hamelash out and Panarin out, I think, is the easy way to look at it. Johnny Brodzinski, a healthy scratch again. So back-to-back healthy scratches for Johnny Brodzinski. And then as well, Urhel Vakanainen was out again, as he had been last game. So Scott Morrow actually got a chance on the number one power play unit and looked decent. Like, that unit didn't score. The second unit did. I mean, technically, Morrow kind of began the goal that was scored. Didn't get an assist on it. If there was a third assist, it would have been his. But I would, and I assume Panarin comes back next game, I would still stick with what it is. And what they also did was they actually had Lafreniere in the net front and took Cooley off, which I don't really care for rewarding Lafreniere, but I actually getting Cooley off the number one unit, I think was the right thing to do. It looked bad. Um, and for me, I know it's not ideal, and I have my doubts, but I think Scott Moore also gains a little bit of confidence just as well, getting those touches and getting those opportunities with high end skill. I feel like it helped his overall game, honestly. And really, they pretty much rolled out the three pairs. I mean, like the least amount of ice time was Carson Soucy at 16:09. And the least amount of shifts was Morrow with 19 shifts. He played 17 minutes. Again, obviously, a little bit like the power play skews that ice time a little bit, but I think that's the way to go here. And, so be it. Like, if Vincent Trocheck or JT Miller, because those would be the most likely candidates, are your net front guys, I think that I would rather go with that, honestly. I'm not confident, but I'm hoping that they'll stick with Morrow and thus stick with him in the lineup. And look, I think that Vakanainen as a healthy scratch makes sense on defense. Um, and then the forward lines. Let's talk about that. This was obviously, with no Panarin, it changes things up a bit. They went with Sherry, Trocheck, Miller, Cooley, Zibanejad, Lafreniere, Sherry, Laba, Perreault, and sorry, not Sherry, Laba, Perreault. They went with Perreault. Um, Feels that way with the amount that Sherry plays as much as he does, but it was Perreault, Laba, and Radish. And then the fourth line was Othman, Carrick, and Rempe. Now, as far as just to start at it, as far as next game with Perrin likely back in, I think it might be for Othman. It would either be for Othman, and this is a guess, it would either be for Othman or for Radish. That would be the two that I would suspect would be the likely candidates to be taken out based on ice time, based on performance. Othman only played 7 minutes. He did take a bad penalty, so it doesn't really work well for him. He had the least amount of ice time. Rempe hasn't played a whole lot either. And there maybe could be the odd game that Rempe sits, but I still think that at this point, like, he would stay in. So yeah, just thoughts on that. But yeah, look, at this point, it's a situation where like a Connor Sherry plays a lot more than he should. We've said that all along, but there's a lack of options. And it's interesting that they decided to go with Perreault on the third line with Laba and Radish. You kind of would have assumed that it would have been Perreault up top. And who knows, maybe with Panarin back in the lineup, it probably will switch up the lineup completely to the point where, who knows, maybe at that point, Perreault, even though logic wouldn't tell you that because Panarin would take up one of the top six spots. I don't know. Maybe the whole look is different. But that was what the lineup was constructed by Mike Sullivan. So yeah, first period, I thought that the Rangers were the better team. Had some early chances that Jordan Binnington stopped, and the Rangers did outshoot St. Louis 10-5 in the first. There were no penalties taken in the first by either team, and towards the end of it, at 18:59, Jonathan Berggren scores his third goal of the season, assisted by Dvorsky. So Berggren was actually just not too long ago. I think this is his second game with St. Louis. He was claimed off waivers by the Red Wings. So this was Berggren's first goal as a Blue on an off-angle shot that Igor would probably want to have back. But the problem here is Igor tries to get it to Gavrikov. And, that should have been simple enough. Maybe it wasn't the most clean pass by Igor as he had to kind of flip it over a Blue defender to get it to Gavrikov. But Gavrikov can't control it. And it puts the Blues in an advantage at this point, kind of down low, where you essentially have like three Blues and one Ranger. Trocheck tries to get back. I wish that Trocheck tried to put a stick on the Berggren potential shot, and Trocheck, again, he kind of got in position, but because Gavrikov, there was nothing he could do once he fumbled the puck. And Berggren from an off angle is able to go high. It might have gone off of Igor's like helmet or shoulder and in. So on the one hand, give credit to Berggren. On the other hand, I think it's one that Igor wants that back again. But other than that, Igor did have a good game. So made some really key saves, especially in the third period. And so the Blues take that 1-0 lead into the second. And then the second period is where there's a bunch of penalties. There actually were no penalties in the first, third, or overtime. But in the second, pretty decent amount. And Perreault actually trips Braden Shen at 143 to put St. Louis on the power play. And look, like there were some opportunities there for St. Louis to take a 2-0 lead, but Igor made some good saves, keeps it at 1-0. And then at 4:07, Justin Falk tripped Sam Carrick. This is actually a pretty nice play. Morrow was involved in it as well. I think there might have been a line change because Carrick was on at that point, I think, with Perreault and Laba, which is kind of interesting. Oh, actually, sorry, scrap that. That was because of the reason for that was because of the penalty kill, because the Rangers penalty kill had just recently expired. So that was the reason for that. And yeah, Carrick drives to the net. Falk takes him down, and Rangers have on the power play. And there were some chances on the first unit, for the first unit, I should say, but they're able to score on a rush play. Morrow gets it over to Laba. And again, there's changes on both ends. Laba takes it into the St. Louis zone, passes it over to the left side of Cooley, and Perreault driving towards the middle. It's Cooley who takes what I guess was a shot pass. I guess it was more of a shot, and it goes off of Perreault's skate and in. So I'm sure it's not the way that Gabe Perreault envisioned his first NHL goal, but hey, like a big goal for the Rangers, ties it up, power play goal, and hopefully that can get him going. I mean, look, Brennan Othmann still does not have, in much more NHL games, still does not have an NHL goal. Gabe Perreault, you don't want it to start to become a thing in your head. And look, Gabe Perreault, what is this? Probably, he's played less than 9 games. This is his 9th NHL game. And look, I think that it's not what you envision with him. With him, it's more vision and patience and, creativity. But hey, good job by him to go into the area he needed to go to. And so there you go. Perreault from Cooley and Laba at 6:02 to tie the game up at 1. And then at 8:22, former Ranger Pavel Buchnevich interferes with Alexis Lafreniere. Rangers don't score on that power play. Then at 14:24, Othmann hooks, get Cam Fowler. Not a good penalty there by Brennan Othmann. And then after that's killed off, Alexis Lafreniere slashes Berggren at 17:57. I mean, Lafreniere is just not very good. I mean, there's no other way to put it for Alexis Lafreniere. He's been given a really great opportunity this year, right? We can't say, oh, Lafreniere is stuck on the second unit the whole time and he's stuck on the third line. No, he's getting ice time with some pretty good players for the most part and just really not doing much of anything with it. And the Rangers, are trying their best to win games despite that. And again, he's not the only one. I've made it clear as far as many other Ranger players that I've had an issue with, but Lafreniere has got to be towards the top. And so the Rangers do kill that off, and it's 1-1 going to the third. And St. Louis was the better team in the third period, no question. They really were. I mean, Pavel Buchnevich had an unbelievable opportunity with maybe about 7 minutes left in the third, wide open. And Igor makes the save, bit of a defensive breakdown. I think, Robert Thomas at one point had a really good chance. But the Rangers do kind of weather the storm, and towards the end of the third, JT Miller has a great chance in front. Trocheck makes it past him with about probably 1:20 left or so. And JT Miller, he gets hit by the St. Louis defender, and as he's on the ice, the puck is loose, and Miller tries to shoot him, and it goes off the post. Now, look, there is a chance. It's not out of the realm of possibility. If the Rangers scored there, it could have been overturned for a goalie interference. I don't know, though, because, again, St. Louis was the one that caused that. But it is one of those things that even if Miller does get it past the line, we don't know that it's necessarily a successful, good goal. But that was a great chance by JT Miller that doesn't convert. So we go to overtime. And St. Louis going into this was 0-7. The only team that had not won past regulation, I think, was the stat. They were 0-5 in the 3-on-3 and 0-2 in the shootout. So just based off that, the Rangers have an advantage. Again, there's no Panarin, but still, pretty bad on the part of St. Louis that, because look, that in the way, and it speaks to, again, that's 8 points. That's 8 chances for a single point they did not get in either situation. So they're 13, 15, and 8, which is kind of interesting. They have a negative 37 goal differential. It's a horrible goal differential, but yet you wouldn't necessarily think that based on the 8. Obviously it accumulates. When you lose 8 games past overtime, that's a -8 on its own. But yeah, they have not been very opportunistic, I guess is what I would say. But again, that goal differential will tell a different story. Anyway, the Rangers make sure that stat continues. I would have come on here. If St. Louis got their first win past regulation, I would have definitely made a big thing about that, how much of a joke it is. But the Rangers, they have played a lot more, and I think that makes sense with their style of play. The Rangers in recent years, I feel like in the Gallant era, and then the as well, the Laviolette era, I just feel like the Rangers didn't play that many overtime games. I feel like it was less than other teams. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm not sure what the stats say. But in this structure of action, with again closer games, more defense, things like that, with Sullivan, the Rangers have played a lot more overtime games, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag. I guess it's been more good than bad. I want to get this right. So I guess that the Rangers are 5-4 in the 3-on-3 and 1-0 in the shootout. So again, it's been a little bit more 6-4 overall, most games being decided in the 3-on-3 portion. And JT Miller has been a huge, huge reason for a lot of the success. On the flip side, Nick Zibanejad has not been. And Zibanejad, there was a lot of, sort of misplays. But the one that stood out before the Rangers win it was Zibanejad tries a flip backhand pass to Will Cooley, which made no sense. Luckily, it didn't cost the Rangers, but that was bad. There was another misconnection, I think, from Trocheck to Lafreniere, where again, Lafreniere needs to be able to at least tip the puck. That and even that wouldn't be great because then St. Louis probably gets the puck. But Lafreniere needs to receive that puck cleanly. So again, there was some frustrations as far as things that happened over time, which could have led to St. Louis maybe scoring, but St. Louis had their struggles as well. Again, they are the worst team in the 3-on-3, and you saw that. But what happens is Vlad Gavrikov, who again made that mistake on the first goal, the only goal by St. Louis. But Gavrikov, and this was the initial unit. It was Miller, Trocheck, and Gavrikov to start the overtime, and they came back on as a trio. And Gavrikov makes a really nice play to get past the St. Louis forward. I'm not sure who it was, but it was a bit of a strength play by Gavrikov where he had to kind of fend him off. And by doing that, he was able to get Trocheck the puck with a little bit of speed, drops the puck back off to JT Miller, and Gavrikov does a nice job of causing a screen. Again, we've seen Vlad Gavrikov in many scenarios, whether it be deflections in front or just he got the overtime winner against Dallas. Gavrikov has shown a little bit of offensive ability, forward ability, and I think that helped as well. But JT Miller snaps off just a really, really great shot. Like, it's moments like this where and we saw it against Montreal, where JT Miller, he's got that heavy shot. It's hard to stop, and he scores past Binnington, his 10th goal of the season. Again, 3 of those goals being in overtime, assisted by Trocheck and Gavrikov, and gives the Rangers the 2-1 win. They needed it badly. Again, things are not looking good for the Rangers. The goal scoring issues continue. A good game for Shesterkin, which, not that he's been bad lately anyway, right? Like, the fact of the matter is that Igor has not really been allowing a crazy amount of goals. I just think one's a little, not at the times you need him. But still, like, I was critical of him against Anaheim. I think this was a good bounce back for him. But yeah, now it's a weekend against the Flyers and the Predators. And the Flyers are coming off of a loss to the Sabres. So they'll be hungry. For the Predator game, they'll be on a back-to-back as well. Obviously, for Nashville, it'll be a little bit easier because they will have they play a Saturday night game home against Toronto, and they will stay home to face the Rangers. But, as far as the Flyers go, I wanted to see recency. Like, they've been okay. They're 4-3-3 in their last 10. I'd say they've been in a little bit of a decline, but hey, 17-10-6, they've been very solid and pretty stingy, like, as far as not giving up too many goals. We'll see. Those matinee Saturday MSG games can be tough. The Rangers have not been too successful. 12:30 start, equal rest for both teams. But again, a Flyer team that's probably going to be a little bit ticked off after losing at Buffalo. It's a pretty big game. If the Rangers want to have aspirations for making the playoffs, which again, I don't feel great about, but it's a long time to go. This is a big game against the Flyers. And I think with that said, I think Igor gets the game against Philly, and then Jonathan Quick gets the game in Nashville. I feel pretty certain on that. I'd be surprised if it was the other way around. And so expect to see Shesterkin in the game against Philly in what will be the first of 4 games against the Flyers. It kind of spread out December, January, February, March. They haven't played them yet. And again, like 12:30 start. So Rangers got to be ready right away. We haven't always seen that. Hopefully Panarin will be back in the lineup. And we'll see who gets taken out. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Othman. And, if it's not him, probably Radish. Expect to see the same defense. And yeah, this ends up being, I think, a pretty big game, honestly. If the Rangers do kind of want to stay in the mix of things. 17-15-4 for the Rangers. And another rallying cry, I think, has to be for them again, is the home road. Like, even though like, I don't really think about it in this situation, but the home road splits become more extreme. The Rangers at home 4-10-3, on the road 13-5-1. I mean, it is so drastically different when you look at the records. And so, yeah, going to be a big back-to-back set. Home against Philly, then at Nashville, but the Rangers find a way to win in overtime. Gabe Perreault gets his first NHL goal. It's the one Ranger goal in regulation. Then JT Miller does it again. He's the overtime hero for a third time in the Rangers' 2-1 win over the Blues.